Hello, and welcome back to Practically Political. It is November 7th, 2025, day 38 of the government shutdown. By 3 days, we have set a record. Congratulations to everyone. Not. We will talk about that later in the show, but I'm joined with my usual partners in crime, Ashley Davis, Court Bardella, and plenty to talk about, folks. Obviously, we had a big election on Tuesday, and I'll get your thoughts in a minute. But one thing it shows is that when Donald Trump is on the ballot, Republicans do great. When he's not on the ballot, they do not do very well. I mean, look at 2017, 18, 19, 21, 22. They did much worse in the midterms. Almost every year, 23, and then 24, obviously they won. So the big question is, what does this mean? The one axiomatic thing in politics that it proves that nothing is forever, right? How many times in 2004 we had the enduring Republican majority with Karl Rove, then in 2008 Obama had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. It was Dems forever. Well, not so much. So here we are, and I think there are a lot of things to take away from this election. I will just point out a couple. I think one of the interesting trends is since a lot of these polls proved registered voters. They measured registered voters, but not likely voters. That's one of the reasons why. Remember, it was going to be 2 or 3 points in the gubernatorial race, and Cheryl run in New Jersey by 13. She blew him out of the water. And I think also a trend which does not bode well for the GOP is that a lot of the particularly Hispanic, but voters of color and younger voters who went to the GOP in 24 migrated back big time. If you look at some of the Latino heavy counties in New Jersey, I mean that was proven in spades. And again, we talked about this in the show over the summer, but this redistricting thing in Texas, I think, is going to blow up for them because it's based heavily on a lot of these Latino voters staying in the Republican column. But anyway, so that's an interesting point as well. So we'll see what happens, but obviously a good night for Dems. Are they out of the woods? No. And obviously we talked about the individual races in a minute, but I'd just love to get your thoughts overall. What say you, Kurt?
I think a couple of things can be true at the same time. One, I completely agree, and data has shown that when Donald Trump's name isn't on the ballot, Republicans have a major turnout problem. That the unique coalition of voters that Trump has been able to cobble together, where people who aren't high propensity voters will come out and actually vote in a presidential election for him, they have no interest in showing up in an off year election, to be sure, and potentially the midterm election. So that trend seems to be holding true. And I think that's the biggest challenge for Republicans looking ahead. If anything, Trump is kind of a political lame duck when it comes to turnout mechanisms. Not at all discounting his current influence and his hold over the party. I'm saying as a mechanism to turn out voters. And create that urgency that I think his coalition feels when his name is on the ballot. Republicans haven't figured out a way to transfer that over to anyone else other than Donald Trump. That's going to be a really big problem for them. Number two, I noticed that Republicans in the midterms are in this 2025 off year election, whether it's in New York to Virginia, across the board, we heard a lot of conversation about the New York City mayoral candidate, now Mayor-elect Mandami, and we heard a lot about Attorney General candidate, Jay Jones's text messages. What I didn't hear from Republicans was anything really talking about the economy. And I feel like they fell into the same trap that Democrats fell into back in 2024, which was ignoring the elephant in the room. James Carville's adage in 92, it's the economy, stupid, really rings true to this day. And it's been interesting watching that role reversal of how Biden and Democrats struggled with the economy and messaging it and inflation in 24. And now Republicans, they don't quite have it all figured out right now. And I think that's part of the reason why we saw what happened this past Tuesday was the Republicans, they told you who to be scared of. They told you to be watch out for the socialists. They told you the hypocrisy of Democrats not dumping Jay Jones. They didn't tell you what they were for, what they would do for you. And I think that backfired on them tremendously.
No, and I agree. And by the way, this is a problem that the Dems had with Obama too, right? They could never carry the Obama coalition to 2 other elections, and they lost the House in 2010. They lost the Senate in 2014. So, and The only thing I would add before you jump in, Ashley, is that a lot of my Trumpy friends were a little bit surprised by what happened on Tuesday. And my response was, duh, because not only are Trump's policies unpopular, but and not only was he not paying attention to what he said he was going to do when he got elected, it's like he didn't even care. He was throwing Halloween parties at Mar-a-Lago and, redoing the East Wing of the White House and hopping all over the world, but he wasn't really focusing on the reason many people thought that he was elected. And you saw a little bit of the Bidenomics thing. Don't believe your wallet, believe me, right? And people just aren't buying that. But what say you, Ashley?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Trump should have been more involved in those 2 races because I think it would have even maybe been worse,
Right.
because because, I mean, neither of those places he was going to play well. But listen, I think my biggest takeaway of it listen, I don't think Republicans are ready to, like, jump off a bridge yet, but I think that it was a good lesson, about exactly what you're talking about, which is the economy. Obviously, the markets are doing well, but, like, are eggs still expensive? Or beef, I think, is what's really expensive the most, not just eggs as much. But my point is groceries in general. And so I think that you saw them at least pivot a little bit since Tuesday, starting to realize that the economy is such a big deal. But my biggest takeaway is that the numbers that both the women governors elects won by, first of all, I think it's amazing that there's 2 new women Republican governors, no matter which side of the aisle. But the New Jersey especially, I mean, like, I think it was almost 15 points, Dave. I'll have to go back and with all the ballots,
Oh,
can't but as of
I
Wednesday
thought it
morning,
was
it was
15 in New Jersey. I mean, 15 in Virginia, 13 in New Jersey, but
or
I could
was
be
it
wrong.
13? Okay. Anyway, it's a huge number, and obviously in Virginia, Spanberger just brought everyone along. I mean, the 8 House seats, obviously all 3 statewide seats. So, uh I think I'm not ready to say, "Oh, we're gonna lose the midterms yet." I mean, remember when Glenn Youngkin won and then the Democrats won all the elections a year later, but it's a good lesson, and I think this is what I love about our country and democracy. If you're mad, go to the polls and vote, and it makes a difference, and so if you're mad at Trump, you just went and voted, and you got different candidates in, and this is what democracy is about.
Absolutely. And I think it will be interesting to see going forward because the best Republican strategist I heard say, well, the canary in the coal mine is dead, but the miners are still alive.
Hmm.
So I do think they have time to turn it around. And let's face it, I still say if the Supreme Court strikes down tariffs, which it looks like they're going to do, though they've given good signals before that haven't come through, but assuming they do that, it's going to be the best thing for Trump. It's going to help the economy. And if you have a strong economy a year from now, and there's been no major shakeups, things could be very, very different. So I think that they should be confident, the Dems, but I don't think they should be cocky. And I think that, yeah,
Democrats should never be cocky,
no,
ever.
Well, neither
no,
should Republicans, but I do think too, though, what the and we said this last week, the Mondami movement, though, is amazing. I mean, you haven't seen that since Obama. I mean, obviously Trump does it, but there was a movement there. His coalition of voters was so interesting. And so the people like that come around, not very often, but also they have to come around at a time when people want change, and people wanted change in New York, and we'll see what happens. I think that, obviously a lot of his policies are gonna be up to the state to have to fund or local boards, but, it will just be interesting how he does, kind of run the city. But you saw his transition team. It was very interesting.
well, I hope
All
so.
women, all women.
I have to say that I was a little disappointed in his acceptance speech because I thought it was a chance to really reach across the aisle and reach out to all New Yorkers. I don't think he did that. I also thought it was petulant and immature and showing very little class the way he ridiculed Andrew Cuomo and then he even quoted Mario Cuomo about the prose and the poetry. And I just think he's better than that. And I know a couple of people that want to give him the benefit of the doubt, fellow New Yorkers who thought that he was off to a bad start. I think that if Michael Bloomberg couldn't deal with the Department of Education in New York, Mondami is going to be like a fly flying into one of the snappers. He's just going to get absolutely annihilated. Again, look, I love New York. It's my home. I want him to succeed. But in one dynamic I will mention is I talked to a couple of people that voted for him, because you look at the age gap, right? To me, that's the interesting things. You had like young women who were under 30 that voted for him by like 60 points.
Yeah.
And women over 65 that voted against him by 20 something points. And it shows a couple things. The macro trend it shows is that, which I agree, that we spend too much on the old in this country and not enough on the young. And that's reflected in how many young people feel that they won't live the American dream. They're not going to make as much as their parents, all that. Scott Galloway has been doing a great tour talking about just the plight of young men. I encourage people to listen to what he's saying. But in any case, and the other thing was some of his policies I think are just junk, right? And I said, well, I mean, he wants to open like 5 grocery stores in 5 boroughs. And they're like, yeah, but it shows that he's willing to experiment. It shows that he's willing to try new things, to tackle affordability. And I think that's what people like. There's this same with Obama, this hope, like anything's possible with this guy. It's a new era. But what do you guys think? How about you, Kurt?
Well, reality steps in, and it's, like,
Yeah,
hard to get stuff done, right? I mean,
right.
this is why no one believes politicians in my mind, because you can run
No,
on all
we
the,
was it we
butterflies and
campaigned.
rainbows.
We
Right.
campaign in poetry. We govern in prose was the old adage.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, and I think
Mario
that's going
Cuomo
to
said
be,
that.
and that's going to be the thing. How much can Mandami translate from the promises he made? Very bold. I mean, no matter whether you agree or disagree, they're very bold pronouncements. Can he back any of that up, and what does that look like? And or will he gain points with the public by just trying? And if he gets a buzzsawed by the establishment, and to me, these things are much more about establishment and young versus old than right versus left, or
Mhm.
left versus far left, or right versus far right. I think that is generational, and if he tries to do some of these things, free busing and expanding access to food, and limiting the income gap as much as he can.
Or rent freezing. That's a terrible idea.
A terrible idea, but very popular. If you are a renter in New York, which is a lot of people, you're like, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard.
Yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
so he will get credit for having an idea that I think will be popular, but there'll be no way to actually institute it. And so you get credit for the thing without actually having to do it.
No, I completely agree, and, I also think you're 100% right, Kurt, that, this is a young versus old, and the excitement, this is what makes you nervous when people say, "Oh, when Republicans say we would love to run against AOC." She brings out excitement, and she brings out the young vote that otherwise will probably most likely stay home. I mean, you look at the vote that Trump got on the young voters because of the Charlie Kirk, because of that whole movement. So there was something that struck a chord, and that's exactly what AOC does. That's exactly what Mamdani does. And to energize that group of people, I think someone like her would be very difficult to run against.
Yeah, I think too for Democrats, um, if I were the Republicans, I would not want to run against someone who is clearly a messaging communications guru. I mean, that's the job of president more than anything is communications and your ability to connect with the American people. And anybody who can incite and excite a base of people that may not ordinarily participate in our process, that is a very formidable person. We are living in a world now where we already know how 30% of the country is going to vote one way. We know 30% of the country is going to vote for the other. No matter what, no matter whose name is up there, they will always vote one way. So for that rest of the group of people that exists, the only way you can win is by expanding the universe of voters who participate in the process and grabbing those new people, because it's like a double benefit if you could get those people to vote. AOC can do that. Mandami can do that. Donald Trump can do that. I have not seen anyone else yet that can do that as effectively as those three political figures.
And that's really true if you look back at every presidential election. And this is why I think Bernie Sanders was not electable. But you have to be able to steal votes from the other side. Biden did it very well against Trump in 2020 because he was the return to normalcy, the more
Yeah.
pragmatic guy. Obviously, Trump did it. People thought he was the most moderate Republican. Obama did it. Everyone did it. Bush had compassionate conservatism, right? Clinton was the new Democrat.
Mhm.
So, and I think that's really true. And when you look at the so-called low propensity voters, as you say, Kurt, have really become the key to the elections because the bases on either side are so locked in. But well, I think we need to talk a little bit about the dear
Are we
old government
sponsored
shut.
by Sonic now? Is that why you took a drink of that, Kurt?
No, actually, I took a drink because I got something caught in my throat.
No, Kurt.
Actually,
Kurt brought up his
food.
son.
It's Fuji.
Well,
Oh,
Fiji
Kurt,
and
look at
Sonic.
Kurt's.
I didn't. Kurt was so good. I didn't even see him take a drink.
I'm a pro. I'm no Marco
You are
Rubio.
a
I know how
pro.
to
You're
subtly
smoother
do
than
it.
I, for sure.